a blackout. I was just, I don't know. I got a blackout. I got so happy. Didn't felt it was real at first, but amazing feeling. Feeling I will never forget.
Can you talk about just your thought process on that play and what you were trying to do?
I got a puck from Louis. He made a great play on the half wall. I heard this game from Lens 2-1. So my first thought is the pass, but their D was a good gap control. So I don't know what I did, but I was trying to go high on Smith and
Hello, everyone. No, this is not a special edition of Fortnite. This is the hockey podcast. It is I, Kevin Olenek, here with you, talking. The second day of the regular season has started. As we are in the midst of this recording, I'm sure Washington and Pittsburgh has probably scored again. Anyway, that's I think it's a 12-12 now. But anyway, so hockey is back, and we are back to talk about the Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames, and all things that are going on in the NHL. I am joined, as always, by hello, Sean.
Hello.
How's it going out there in the fine city of Calgary, Alberta?
It's snowy.
Snowy. Is it because of the tears because of the loss last night?
Yeah, that made the roads a little icier this morning.
All right, and joining us from BC, I forget where you actually. It starts with an S.
It's Terrace, BC.
It is. That does not start with an S. But
it does not start with an S. No, no. There is Smithers up here though, which you might be thinking of, but no, it's not. It's not where I am. Yeah, Tyler here. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you all too. Coming up, we are going to talk about the phenomenon that was Elias Petterrson. We'll talk about the game last night. We'll give the Canucks and the Flames perspective, since I'll have to do that. We're also going to talk about Fortnite. The 4 A's, and we are going to talk about Sportsnet as well. We're going to have a little conversation about Sportsnet. We might have a little bit of an argument about Sportsnet. I have a hunch, maybe a little bit, who knows. And we are going to also talk about if it's realistic to expect a player to take a pay cut to be part of a team, even if they're going to win a Stanley Cup. But, of course, it is... We have to start with last night's game. I guess I'll put it this way. There were 7 opportunities for the Calgary Flames to win the game. They were 0 for 7. The Flames were 0 for 7 on the power play. Canucks 7 for 7 penalty kill. They come away with a 5-2 victory, scoring 4 goals in the third period. What were your thoughts? What did you like about what you saw from the Canucks last night? I guess maybe it's pretty obvious where to start. So start from the shining star.
Well, Patterson just absolutely took the roof off of the arena with that goal. That shot, that release, the deceptiveness of freezing Smith and just absolutely roof jobbing it. It caught me by surprise. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise because we've seen the videos of his shot over last year in the SHL, and yeah, we all thought it was good, but I don't think anyone really understood how good his shot is until that moment.
The way the game went last night, I would say, is about as good as Canuck fans could hope for with all the question marks surrounding the team. And the preseason was so abysmal that, I had a feeling of doom and gloom going into the thing. And the team came out flying and earned a victory. Yes, the opposition didn't play very well. Calgary went 0 for 7 on the power play, I believe. So that certainly helped the Canucks' case. But the guys that you really wanted to see perform did. Petterson, Markstrom, Tyler Mott had a great game. He gets a spot in the opening day roster ahead of Sam Gagner, who got waived. So you were hoping to see some performance there. Jake Virtanen got a goal. I mean, this is a guy that's maligned and still seems to be, and he had a great game. So everything you were hoping to see, some exciting quality of hockey. Everything that occurred last night was very encouraging for Game 1 of 82. Long way to go, obviously. There's going to be a lot of growing pains still, but a very encouraging start for the Canucks.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're a Canucks fan, you have to come out really happy because there was a really strong 4-line game. I didn't really think anyone was a passenger, although Travis Green wasn't entirely enamored with the Horvat, Boeser, Barchi line, but and Markstrom pretty much. I know the fans were all over Patterson, and I get it, but the save on Monahan when it was 3-1 on the power play, Virtanen just gets out of the box, goes in on the breakaway, and scores was pretty much the death knell for the Flames. Markstrom made some big save, like 10 Beller saves last night. It was probably one of his better games I've seen him play.
Mm-hmm. His positioning and technique were right on a top level. At least for the first 2 periods, he battled a little bit, getting a little over aggressive in the third period, but his battle game was on too when that happened.
Yeah. Tyler, did you have anything to say to that? Or?
Well, I mean, he bailed out the team so many times. I mean, there was a number of defensive breakdowns with just grade A scoring chances, and he was up to the task. He was aggressive, playing high in the goal crease, and it's kind of like Petterson didn't look uncomfortable or tentative at all. Neither did Markstrom. He really looked ready for this game and turned in a strong performance.
So one of the things that people were a little bit confused about was why Patterson played only 10 minutes last night. If there were 7 power plays or penalty kill opportunities, Patterson's not going to be killing penalties, so I think that's part of that.
Yeah,
and I think Travis seems to want to ease the rookies into the lineup, and he set Boeser out in the first game of the season last year against the Oilers. So not too surprising that he kind of does the same thing here in a sense. The game dictated that too. But are you upset that Patterson only played 10 minutes?
I think if it continues, I think there's an issue there, but I don't think that's an issue for his first NHL game. And yeah, the seven power plays for the Flames really took away potential ice time opportunities for Patterson. I think had the Canucks not have taken so many penalties, like limit to 3 or 4, and we would have had Patterson up over 12 minutes at the very least, and that's where you want him to be playing at least to start the season, and then he can grow from there.
I mean, if I was a paying customer at the game, really anticipating seeing this guy make his debut, I think I would probably have a feeling of wishing that he got more ice time. But regular season pace is a step up from preseason pace, so I think it's quite prudent to ease a new guy into it, just as the Canucks seem to like to do.
Well, when he was on, he dominated. So if I was a paying customer there, I would be. I know it was only 10 minutes, but I certainly saw a lot of him. I thought him and Goldobin showed some really good chemistry last night. Goldobin, I thought, played really well. That was probably one of his better games as well. So they look like a really good combination. They feed off each other, and that's a good sign. And we kind of suspected that going forward. But yet, in our little Vancouver world, we can't all be all happy. We have to talk about the things that bother us. And Mr. Brock Boeser did not have a shot attempt last night. How concerned are you about that? Was that a big deal to you? Mountain out of a molehill?
I think that's going to be an anomaly this season. I didn't think, that line did struggle at times, but they still had their chances. I think there's a couple of things in play here with that. The teams have more of a playbook on Boeser now, and they know sort of how to check him, and he's just trying to figure out how to take that next step and become more dynamic and more unpredictable. And you saw a little bit of that, but he still needs to go back to his bread and butter, which is the shots. And I think we'll see him shoot more throughout the season.
His last regular season game last year before missing the final stretch with injury, I think it was like early March sometime, and then didn't start training till July. So he is sort of playing catch up a little bit. So it shouldn't be a surprise if he gets off to a slow start. Now, as far as no shots, well, the Canucks were in control of the game most of the night, so that may have prompted him to play it a little safer out there. I noticed a couple of times where he was in good position defensively to avoid giving up a bad opportunity the other way. So it could just be a little bit of just cautiousness easing back into it himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. It's first game back. I don't think there's much to worry about that.
Well, it's more of an issue if they're losing and he's not, producing offense, right? Then it becomes, a problem, because his primary function there obviously is to get shots on net.
Yeah, but last night it wasn't. His non-shots weren't a factor. They were still able to win the game. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's going to happen this year with the Canucks is that the top two lines are going to take turns sort of having good games and bad games, and depending on how the opposition plays them. The more attention the Patterson line gets, the better news for the Horvat-Boeser line, because that means they're seeing less of the top pair, the top lines for checking, and getting more opportunities to exploit lesser players.
Yeah, it's going to depend each night, and so we'll certainly see about that. Yeah, and I also think the other key for the Vancouver Canucks was the bottom six, the Virtanens, the Motts, the Leipzigs. We'll get to the Flames in a second, but I thought they had a severe advantage over the Flames defense in terms of skating, especially on Leipzig's goal. You could see how quick he was. He beat Stone. He didn't blow, but he kind of got away from Stone really quickly there. Took advantage of some Flame mistakes, I thought, as well. In my opinion.
Yeah, I think the Flames defense looks too slow for the when things get going at the way the new NHL can get.
Yeah. For me, that's the. I won't start there. I think we have to start for this 0 for 7 power play. And if I was coaching this team, I would institute this policy, because if the Calgary Flames have only done this for over 20 years, if you are going to do a drop pass, you are fined. You are able to pay a fine for doing a drop pass. It is ridiculous. It is so predictable. The Flames continue to have this predictable drop pass, and I'm like, everybody knows you're going to do this drop pass. Can you find some other way to make a pass other than the drop pass? It is too predictable, and it was too much last night. Giordano said they couldn't set up in the first two periods, and I think that was part of it. Is you know what the Flames are going to do, even if there's a new coach. You know that they're going to do these stupid drop passes, and it's easy to defend.
Well, the drop pass is a very standard zone entry tool that all the teams use. It's the setup and the positioning of the players for the drop pass that make or break it. And the Canucks have had issues with that in the past as well, where they've tried to have this drop pass and just no one's moving and they can't seem to gain the zone, and then the puck's being iced step back down to the other end again. It's more than just it being a drop pass. It's the need to figure out the positioning and the tactics to gain that zone to make that drop pass worth it. Because the whole point of the drop pass is to give it to someone with speed who can gain the zone and catch the defending team flat-footed a bit.
Yeah, I guess I see your point, but I guess it's, there are teams that can get into the over the blue line and they have some creativity and they can establish the zone. The Flames have struggled with that, and it feels like they do the same thing over and over again, and it feels like teams have caught on to what they're going to do. Like they seem to be one of the more predictable offenses in the National Hockey League.
Well, there's other ways to gain the zone, like skate it across the blue line, do a little button hook, find an outlet, get the puck moving. I mean, you don't have to do the same thing over and over again. I mean, it is a standard, or it is a conventional way nowadays to gain the zone on a power play. But if it becomes too predictable, like you say, Kevin, then you're just making it easy for the opposition.
Yeah, and
there's got to be an element of surprise there.
Yeah, and there really wasn't much of an element of surprise last night. I didn't feel for the Flames power play. Defense, Valimaki made the big jump there on Pettersson's goal. He jumped in a little too early. That's going to happen. He's a rookie. But overall, I feel like one of the things I noticed, I thought the Flames defense was pretty slow, in my opinion. And I'm one of them that thought that maybe Rasmus Andersson should have made the team. I thought there would have been more upside in having Andersson than Stone, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. But I thought Mike Smith was okay last night, but he didn't make the huge save, which, I'm not saying that he had a chance to stop any of those goals. It was none of the goals were necessarily, I'm using air quote, his fault, but he didn't take away an opportunity for the Canucks and give the Flames a chance to win, if that makes sense. I felt Markstrom was the better goalie, and it's kind of unfair to say that to Smith, but, Markstrom is in part why the Canucks won the game, I think.
Oh, he's a huge factor. I think Mike Smith played well enough to give the Flames a chance to win. I would agree with your comment about the Flames defense looking slow. I think just in general, the Canucks outworked the Flames last night. They were getting to more of those second chance opportunities and clearing the zone as opposed to getting hemmed in and into a fire drill like we've seen so many times the last few years with the Canucks. They were able to get to those loose pucks in their own end and get them out with regularity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Canucks defense looked completely different and not the same defense that we saw in preseason where they couldn't make a pass, an outlet pass, a breakout pass to save their lives. Last night they were able to, and they were able to get that puck out, get some speed through the neutral zone and create chances off the rush.
I think Derek Pouliot had a decent game. Last time we spoke, we were kind of wondering whether his spot on this roster was safe. I thought he had a decent game. But I guess the other thing I would point out about the defense is this was a group that had Eric Branson present and Ben Hutton not present. And, Branson, the hit was rather cheap on the Dubé there, the new guy for the Flames. And he ends up having to fight over it, and he won that fight pretty definitively and really got the team going, I think. I mean, we can debate maybe whether that's, any of that should have happened, fighting in hockey and all that kind of thing. But his presence was certainly felt last night, and I think it made a difference.
Yeah, Branson played a game the style of game that he needs to as consistently. That hit was on Dubé was early. He stepped up a bit early, caught Dubé just before the puck came. He makes that jump up a split second later, and he's catching Dubé, just perfect timing on a what would have been a clean hit. And then the fight versus Hominick. Hominick stepped up, being the good old school Canadian kid, standing up for his teammate and just getting a beating because
he got popped big time.
Oh yeah, he got belt. Yeah, because he was out for a while too. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind him stepping in that situation. But I guess that's the age-old question: is do you dress that guy that can stand up to a Branson? Is there a need for that tough guy in this game anymore? Or what the Sedins did so well when they were getting cheap shots is they just simply made teams pay with the power play. And if you have an effective power play, that also seems to eliminate some cheap shots.
It can. I think the hockey's such an emotional sport that and such a fast sport that the bad hits are going to happen, and I think that's gets lost at times. And with that emotion comes not necessarily a need for sort of a quote unquote enforcer, or at least someone who's willing to drop the mitts and fight, but maybe just a step below that, where the morale of the team would definitely would get a good hit, a good injection after that. Had Hominick held his own, or even won the fight, that there would have been a bit more of a momentum swing for the Flames, just because of that raw emotion of, oh shit, that was a bad hit type deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that, if the fight outcome there went some other way, then maybe the game unfolds differently. Instead, it had a demoralizing effect. I mean, you have your new young star take an ugly hit, and then when a teammate goes to stand up for him, he gets whooped badly. It's got to be deflating, you would think.
Yeah, you could feel it. It was Dubé's first shift, I think first or second shift of the game, can't remember. But I mean, but really, 9 times out of 10, if Branson and Hominick fight, Branson's going to win. Branson's just a heavier guy. He's in a different weight class, and Hominick doesn't really fight. Like, he's not a fighter per se.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would suspect on Saturday the Flames will have someone dressed that will pay a visit to Mr. Branson. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
I think we'll see Dalton Prout or Peluso get dressed on Saturday for sure.
Peluso's in the minors, so it probably will be Prout, but we'll have to see. And I guess that it's the question of the tough guy, if that tough guy is needed. I mean, you look at Vegas last year, and why I'm thinking, and we do have to do the predictions this year as well. So I did mention that. I forgot to put that on the agenda for everyone, but we are doing predictions as well. But Ryan Reeves really, I think, allowed the Vegas Golden Knights to play with a lot of freedom during the playoffs. And I can't help but wonder if Ryan Reeves was on Pittsburgh, if we would be talking about a three-peat.
Presence is important. I mean, as long as those types of players that are able to answer the bell are adequate in terms of their play, then I mean, I think you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's
straight up goon is long gone from hockey. But as long as you can, especially on defense, if you can be Branson and provide fairly steady, adequate defense and be a presence, that helps the team. I think.
Agreed.
Yeah. And you look at a guy even like Derek England in Vegas too. He's the same way, right? But I think personally, I would say England's a bit better of a player than Branson, just my opinion. But I think the Flames deeply miss that guy. But that's you want a guy that can do both. I think is pretty valuable. Maybe we don't want even a guy. We should also get into this a little bit as well, probably a little bit later, but what Marchand did to Eller after Eller danced around the Bruins bench and celebrating. You do want a guy that kind of stands in there and defends the team. And I don't know. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So there was a big debate going into this game about who the captain will be. It was one of two things. It was going to either be Bo Horvat's the captain and full out, or they were going to go with all assistants. And they ended up with the 4 A's. Horvat, Edler, Tanev, and someone else. But
Sutter,
yes. Thoughts? Are we happy with this? Is this the right move?
I like it. I think that's been my thought process through this whole thing is that the smart play would be to just do 4 A's this year for two reasons. One, it helps ease Bo Horvat into becoming the next captain, which he is. That was all but confirmed yesterday too. Benning or Green both said that Bo Horvat is there apparently to get the C, but you don't want to rush him into it. And two, just giving the next captain Bo Horvat the breathing space between the Sedins and when he takes over is a good thing too.
It gives the team an opportunity to turn the page from the Sedins in a little bit more of a natural manner. I think most people can see where it's headed and that it's likely to be Bo. But in a season where they're expected to do poorly, do you really need to throw additional focus on a guy that you're really counting on? I think as far as captaincy goes, unless you're a playoff team, there isn't really a big need for one. If you're a playoff team, then it really comes down to who's going to be that most clutch guy, who's the guy that's going to rally the troops in the dressing room when the backs are up against the wall. Who's going to provide that example, that presence to rally around. The Canucks. This is they're rebuilding. What's the rush for it, right? Just appease the fans. They shouldn't be making decisions just simply to appease the fans or try and sell some jerseys with a 53 and a C on the front.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, first of all, I think Edler and Tanev have been with the team a long time, and I do think they are part of the leadership core, and I think it's good to acknowledge that. And
they're the senior guys on the team, so that's good, I think.
And I think there's some of the fan base that are not big fans of Brandon Sutter, but I think he obviously brings something to this team. And I think it's a reasonable thing to give him an A. And I think it's almost the other way to look at this too is you're giving the guy sort of an apprenticeship before he's actually the captain. He learned under the Sedins, but now he's going to be the leader without the Sedins, and there's an adjustment to, if he's going to do something different than Henrik and Daniel did, there's always going to be a little bit of a friction when there's new leadership. Oh, that's not how we did it before. Why are we doing it differently? Kind of that, and so it allows kind of the team to get used to Bo and Bo to get used to the position. So I don't see this being a big problem. I think it'll be fine. And you're right. I think there'll be an interesting question about if there should be one captain on teams. I think every situation is going to be different, but yeah, I think this team will be fine with that. But
even saying that playoff teams need it, Vegas went all the way to the Cup final and they didn't have a captain.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, same thing there as a team that's starting from scratch. In their case, if you're a player on that team, would you not want that to sort of unfold in a natural fashion? I mean, I think after one season now, and they've gone on a long run, it's probably a lot more clear to them now who the leaders are, and at some point they'll probably make a choice, and everybody will be on board with it. But they let it happen naturally, right? It wasn't imposed from above by management or anything for other reasons that players might think are not the right reasons.
The Minnesota Wild went years without having a captain, an official captain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing. I mean, yeah, I think it's an interesting debate going forward. But the presumed future captain announced yesterday, and this has been a debate for a long time, precursed by an apparent rumor that there was a player on the Vancouver Canucks, let's clarify this. Jeff Merrick said that there have been players that were in a part of a draft that were addicted to video games, and the name Oli Juolevi came up as a rumored name with Jeff Merrick shot down like that. We don't know who it is, but it has led to a debate about Fortnite, and Bo Horvat announced that Fortnite, the video game, is not going to be played by the players during any road trips. So this has been a hotly debated topic, so I'm going to open the floor. What are your thoughts on this? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? What do you think?
It's a bit of an overreaction by the Canucks. There's pros and cons that have been fiercely debated about gaming, especially in such a stressful job as working for the playing hockey in a hockey fevered market as the Canucks do in Vancouver. I think there is room for it. But to me, this is just a one way of just controlling things like hockey teams do. You've got curfews and rules like that. This is just another one like it. It's just a bit of an overreaction, as is a lot of the reactions from fans on social media about it.
I think it's probably a bit of a drastic step. It would be a non-story if other players around the league and in other sports weren't talking about Fortnite, but because there's this discussion and there's so much talk and hype around Fortnite and how it's something that pro athletes like to do during their downtime, I guess the concern for the Canucks must be that they're concerned with the perception that the players are not focused. And you know, if they do have a young team, and if Horvat's the one out there saying we don't need this, we're not going to do that, we're going to spend our downtime on the road bonding and trying to grow as a group, then, that sounds good, doesn't it? Really, I don't think that most of the players would have such a problem with it to the point where they're not getting proper rest or they're distracted or whatever, but perception is the thing, and if the Canucks are concerned that the fans are going to see the team as not being focused on winning or something, then I don't mind the move. But the degree to which it's been talked about is pretty mind-boggling. But I guess that's how it is with Canadian teams. I mean, everything gets analyzed to the nth degree.
What is the difference in your head between playing Fortnite all night? In theory, whatever someone does. There are people that play video games all night in this world. We know that. It happens. Lots of gamers do it. It's part of that culture. They pull some all-nighters. But what is the difference between doing that and going out late at night having a couple of too many beers and possibly getting into some trouble that you shouldn't?
I think it's equal to me on that. It's this the consequences are the same. You're tired. You're causing trouble with your teammates. You're letting your teammates down. You're letting your organization down, which is why I think they're putting some restrictions on it. I think is fair. A flat out ban on it on the road is, like as I said earlier, just a bit too much of an overreaction.
Anything else on that, or?
Yeah, I'll be interested to know if they change their position on that later in the season.
I gotta predict that they will. I think I can kind of see that. I think this will kind of be toned down. And then Patrick Laine got involved. What were you bothered by that? Or?
Well, I mean, I don't really care what he thinks, but I mean, it's never a good thing when an athlete starts commenting on what other people's business is. You know, like individual sport, team sport. Focus on what you're doing there, Patrick Laine. I mean, that's better for yourself and better for the Winnipeg Jets. So for him to take a swipe like that is really unnecessary, and it'll blow over, and it's not going to get talked about probably in a couple of days. But I mean, I don't know if you saw Jake Virtanen's reaction to it, but I mean, he just scoffed at it. Bristled like what he should just be quiet, basically. So I can see why Canucks players would be irked by that, but that's just added motivation.
Yeah, but the other thing is like these, as we said, it's a story, and the media is asking questions, and I don't think as much as you can sort of say, yeah, don't talk about another team when it doesn't really matter to you. I have no issues with what Laine said. And the cherry picked quote is one thing, but the actual full quote said he said that if Winnipeg struggles, they'll put a ban on it as well. So it's more of a spin thing for me with when I read these quotes and all that from the media, because these players are getting asked these questions and they're giving honest answers, and I think we should be welcoming these players to do that, and not necessarily say, "Oh, don't talk about another team" or something like that, because we want to see the personalities of these players. We want to see the honesty. We want to see the raw emotion and all that, because that's what makes them real. That's what makes them relatable. And the reaction by Virtanen and Sutter is just as good, in my opinion, because what they're saying is like, yeah, say mind your own business. This is our team, especially after last night when they go out and beat the Flames 5-2, right? It's tough because you want these honest answers, but you also, as a fan or a coach or an organization, you also want the players to be careful with what they want, with what they say.
Yeah, I mean, if Laine kept his comments to basically, how they would do things there with a Fortnite or whatever, and he didn't sort of say that the Canucks are doing it because of how their season went the year before, it would have been a safer clip and probably didn't get talked about much. But I mean, it certainly does add a little spice to the first Vancouver-Winnipeg matchup. I'm sure this will get brought up again at that point. And, if it does have a motivating effect for guys like a Jake Virtanen and a Brandon Sutter, then that's great.
Hey, the NFL has mastered that. Jalen Ramsey went off today on Tyreek Hill, and everybody's going to be watching that Kansas City Chiefs game because of that. Yep. Jalen Ramsey goes off on teams, and you know what? People watch. That's why the Jags are a watchable team. It's not because of their quarterback, that's for sure. But, I mean, the NFL, they allow that kind of, I don't want to say smack talk, but they kind of they allow these personalities to be the personalities. And I think it's one of the ways that the NFL has been able to make themselves so popular. And I think that's, the NHL has lacked that. We're a little bit too conservative in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't really think anything was too offensive by what Laine said. And, yeah, I mean, yeah, fine. Everyone chirp a little bit. Everyone chirp a bit. There was another game last night. I'm not sure if you're aware.
You mean the American League wildcard game?
Yeah, there was an American League wildcard game. There was a game between Washington. The Yankees. Oh, by the way, I'm just so you know, this is what's going to happen with the Yankees and Red Sox game. That series is going to last 600 hours, 20 minutes, and 32 seconds. I'm calling it now. That's going to be, my gosh, those games are going to be long.
Oh, yeah.
Pack a lunch. That's the first time they've been in the playoffs since 2004, since
That's
the
right.
comeback. So that's going to be interesting. Sportsnet PR featured on first Scotiabank Wednesday night hockey broadcast of the season. An original sixth matchup reached 4.7 million Canadians. The home of hockey between the Toronto Maple Leafs and some other team was playing. We aren't sure who they were because they were barely mentioned, but for people to know, that was the Montreal Canadiens, the franchise with 26 Stanley Cups, the most of any still in the National Hockey League, with some of the greatest players that have ever laced skates in this league, legacy franchise, a loyal fan base. I get the Tavares hype. I totally got it. Like, I totally get, if you're a Leaf fan, why you're excited about that. But if I was a Habs fan last night, and this was a national broadcast, not a regional broadcast, because 4.7 million Canadians watched this, if I was a Habs fan, I would be irate at how Sportsnet treated the Canadians. That was unbelievable. I literally was wondering at what point if they were actually going to have the dress code change, that all of the announcers were allowed to wear Leaf jerseys. I didn't see the Sportsnet highlights, but apparently they only showed the 3 Leaf goals. They didn't. If I was a Habs fan, I would be irate at what happened last night and how their team was covered.
Well, that's if you weren't watching the French telecast, I guess. And, maybe that's part of the thinking there is that most of the viewership is going to be Leaf supporters or neutral people, because the biggest chunk of the Habs fan base is probably watching the French telecast. That may be part of their thinking. I think that when it comes to this type of thing, when a production team gets their storylines, boy, they stick to them come hell or high water. And obviously the storylines going into opening night in a Leafs game, regardless of who they're playing, is the new guy, the shiny toys. There's big expectations. How are they going to do? What kind of start are they going to get out to? It's all about the Leafs. And they are obviously the franchise with the biggest fan base in the country, so it's easy for them to do that. But yeah, it gets frustrating if you're the other team.
The Canadians are well traveled, though, Tyler, and I don't think it's just a French base. I mean, I guess we can probably a good chunk of that fan base is French for sure, but
yep.
In Western Canada, there is a really strong Hab fan base that comes to Canuck games, Oiler games, and Flames game, and I would argue it's as strong as the Leaf fan base. So I get that there's an assumption that this is mostly Leafs, but I think that there's a really big presumption here.
Well, yeah. It's the eyeballs on the telecast, right? I mean, if a lot of the French-speaking fans are not watching the telecast, then it does to Rogers. They just don't count. They're not ratings, right?
And the other thing is, as you mentioned it before, the big story really was the regular season debut of John Tavares in a Leafs jersey. Like, Yeah, if it was the only other player that you would say is that on the Habs that you were kind of excited to watch was Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and maybe they just didn't want to say his name. So that's hard to say.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm impressed with that stab you took at that, actually. That was pretty
it's
good.
not bad. I would give you applause for that, because I was like, I'm not touching that name. Forget it.
Sean was in the green room earlier practicing that.
Yeah. I was going to use the guy that Habs drafted.
Kotkaniemi. 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 Did I get it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Who has the training in professional broadcasting here?
Oh, yeah.
Actually, just as he looked really good, though. Actually, he's a pretty talented player. But I think that, this might be the Leaf. This is also part of this is going to aggravate the anti-Leaf fan that is like, you know what, I'm really tired of all of this Leaf, and it's just, it just feels like it's going to be all Leafs all the time this year, more than ever, because they feel this is their best shot at a cup.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. Well, yeah, it's that's the bread and butter for ratings is Toronto. It always has been. The majority of the population nationally that watches hockey is in Southern Ontario, and the majority of fans in Southern Ontario are Leafs fans, so they'll placate to them.
Look, this goes on in the United States as well. The Buffalo Sabres get numerous appearances on NBC Sports Network. It doesn't matter how bad they are. Why? The ratings. They just stick with the same teams all the time for their Sunday games. There's Boston and Philadelphia and Detroit, and it just doesn't matter because those are the teams with big fan bases, big markets, Original Six, cachet, whatever. So it does become nauseating as long as they at least try to give the impression that there's two teams out there. That's good. I think when it gets to the point where they're only talking about one team, or 80% of the telecast is only on one team, or they only interview certain people associated with the one team, then it gets to be kind of problematic for credibility.
Yeah, and that's what it felt last night for me.
Yeah.
But I can choose not to watch Leaf games. I will not add to their ratings. They can go on without me.
Well, it used to be, Kevin, that under the CBC days on a Saturday night, most people were force-fed them. You didn't have the choice. And now, at least in the Rogers world, there are 2 or 3 other games available on that early time slot on Saturday. So you have the choice, sir.
Yes, I know. We have the choice. Fight the power.
Yes. Just not last night.
Yeah, no, not last night. But that's whatever. It's yeah. I think we'll be talking about this more, because you can feel a bit of the frustration from some of the fan base. And I got into a fight with Darren Dreger with this on Twitter, and he's like, "You're being hateful." I'm like, no, there's a legitimate anger towards your only love for Toronto. So, but, if they win the Stanley Cup, we're all wrong. We'll get to those predictions in a bit. But first, Brendan Shanahan spoke to the media yesterday, and William Nylander, you may have noted, is not in that lineup for the Leafs. I do actually think that this is a bigger hole than the Leafs are letting on at this point in time, because we talk about that defense in 1 second, but on one hand, that's going to be a bit of an issue. I'm not entirely enamored with the wingers, but here's what Brendan Shanahan said about what the expectations are about William Nylander, and I just will be playing a bit of this.
So while these things are not easy to do, Kyle and I are on the exact same page as far as the things we need to do in order to achieve it. So we're working hard toward William. We've drafted William. We feel we're big fans of William. We want William to be a part of this, but obviously this is a process that he needs to go through. And like I said earlier, this is I can speak from personal experience that when I get together with some of my old mates, from the Cup years in Detroit, we talk about winning together and growing together, and that's what we remember looking back. And at the end of the day, we all found a way to fit with each other so that we could keep adding to the group. And that's obviously what we are asking some of our young leaders to do. There's a lot of other voices, and understandably so. Like I said, it's not for everyone, and we're not for everyone. But we think that the players that we currently have, while it's not going to be easy, we have great confidence that they have bought into being a part of this program and being a part of the Toronto Maple Leafs and representing Toronto in a way that they understand what's going to be most important.
So, what do we make that Brendan Shanahan basically asking William Nylander to take a pay cut to be part of the team?
I think it's tough to make that comparison from today's day and age to Shanahan's day and age when he won the Cup in Detroit. It was a pre-cap era. I looked it up earlier today. He made in that 2002-2003 season $7 million. It's a bit rich coming from him when he was making that, and there was that team was stacked with players making about the same, like all making similar money to that. So I don't know. I can't really take what he said seriously, knowing that.
No, and the thing was when he got to the end of a contract with the Red Wings in the mid-2000s, and it was looking like he was going to have to take a little less to stay, he bolted for the Rangers. So it's just absurd. First of all, no salary cap. Okay, so that's a tough comparison right then and there. The other comment I would make as well is that this is just so typical of the Maple Leafs. There's this belief that because they're the Maple Leafs and because they're an Original Six franchise and a storied franchise, that everybody wants to play there, and it should feel like they're privileged to play there. And William Nylander is not Canadian. Why would he be thinking that? This is his chance to cash in. It's about his future.
Okay, but I do understand where Shanahan is coming from, though, because he wants to create the culture that you want to be part of that team, and I get where he's going. I think his comments are based on what he got to do during his career. And that Detroit Red Wings team, they were spending money hand over fist. Like, it was basically they were the New York Yankees at the time, and there was teams that had the budget of the Oakland A's in the Moneyball era. It was such an embarrassment about what some teams were spending and what some teams weren't. It was ridiculous. So
there were no Red Wings guys taking discounts in those days.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, they were paying. That team had Shanahan, Hall, Robitaille. That team was as close to a super team that we have had within the last 20 years. So, yeah, for Shanahan to say that he kind of is basically, make a sacrifice to be part of the team, and bringing that back to his era, that's just, that's rewriting history and ridiculous. But at the same time, his point about being part of an organization, about being part of a team, is I think what he's trying to get to William Nylander to buy into. And
I think he's also talking to Marner and Matthews here as well, Kevin.
Yeah, probably. He wants them to take that pay cut, or.
And I think as a team, you can ask that, but until you actually prove that you can actually be a successful team and make a run in the playoffs, it's really hard for players to buy in. Yeah, and the Leafs have not done that yet. Yeah, they've had one good season. They've made the playoffs. They still haven't won it. They still haven't won a playoff series since we got HD TV.
Yeah. And Mike Babcock hasn't won a series since he left Detroit.
Yeah, this jumping to conclusions that the Leafs are a Stanley Cup contender is, I mean, they look good on paper with what they've got, but it's still a bit of a media creation. I mean, they've played one game here.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, too. If the Arizona Coyotes walk up to Austin Matthews and say, you know, we're going to give you 8 plus 8, do you really think that Austin Matthews is going to go, no? That he has an opportunity to go home, play at home with his family that he hasn't really had a chance to do even in his junior career? Do we really think he's going to go no? Like, do you really expect this guy to say, he's going to play with the Toronto Maple Leafs because they have a chance at a cup? When, if you're Austin Matthews and you believe in your abilities, you could win a cup anywhere. If he's as good as we are projecting him to be.
There's no player coming out of an entry-level deal that is concerned with taking less money in order to win. They're so early in their career. It's about making that big jump in salary.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's like I said. I think the idea, in theory, that Dubas and Shanahan and the Leafs are trying to do is there. It is and fair, but they have to prove that they can win and win a playoff round, let alone make a deep playoff run before you're going to get the buy-in.
Yeah, and now the narrative that's out there is that John Tavares didn't take the biggest offer. He chose to come to Toronto because of a chance to win and blah, blah, blah. Well, he's made a whole bunch of money already in his career. It's like over $40 million or something. It's easy for him to take a little less and come, especially when he's assured for 7 years.
Well, not only that, people have not talked about this that much, but his endorsements that he's going to get with the Leafs would have been far exceeded anything that he would have got anywhere else. He's going to get... He's not losing. He's taking a pay cut. He may have taken less from the Leafs, but his endorsement deals for playing with the Leafs are going to be astronomical.
Sure, good point.
And that's why he's, in a lot of ways, that's where that advantage that Toronto had is because of the endorsement deal. San Jose never really had that. The Islanders couldn't offer that. No one else really could. So, from a business, I understand the narrative that Tavares is coming home. I understand that, but it was a solid business decision on Tavares' part as well. So, and we forget that. And I mean, from the NHL's perspective, do you not think in some ways, considering the battle that they have had of getting Arizona to be somewhat of a relevant franchise in the National Hockey League, that they would not be at least a little tiny bit excited to have Austin Matthews play in Arizona?
Well, they would be, but they would have to offer him something so huge to force the Leafs into a situation where they couldn't match in the restricted free agency. I mean, there's a lot of ifs there. But the point is well taken, Kevin. I mean, there is interest from other teams. It's not like Austin Matthews is all in on the Leafs forever.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in terms of relevance, I'm not disputing that the Leafs and the Coyotes are in the same league. That's not the point. But this whole argument is want Tavares to come home, Austin Matthews could want to play at home. Like, we just don't know that, right? So that's the thing. And the other thing, not to relate this to the NFL, but I think it is an important point going forward here. Athletes, I think that we are about to go through an era. The NFL is hitting there, but I think the NHL is going to hit it because, I mean, how many teenagers was it last night that they said were making their debut?
31, I think. With
the amount of concussions and the potentials of injuries And you even look what happened last Sunday with what happened with Earl Thomas. Getting that second and that third contract, they're going to – it's not unreasonable for athletes to expect to cash in on that because you just don't know. I think that the player playing 35 to 40, I think we're going to see less. We're going to start seeing less of that in the NHL. I think we're going to start seeing some 29, 30-year-olds retiring because, some teams are some teams don't want over 30 and want to go younger and rebuild in youth movement in one sense, but in the other sense too, it's just, the risk of injuries at the age of 30 for a lot of players is going to be too high to want to continue. And they're going to want to cash in on that second contract after their entry level and get out and see if they can support their family.
The Maple Leafs have 12 players on their active roster, not including Nylander, that are free agents after this season. Includes their backup Garrett Sparks, backup goalie. They got 3 UFA defensemen and an RFA. They have a couple of UFA forwards, including Tyler Ennis, and then several RFA forwards. We talk lots about Marner and Matthews, but there's also Par Lindholm and Josh Levo and Andreas Janssen. So there's a lot of money that needs to be spent after this season to fill out a roster. And, I mean, unless they're planning to bring in a whole bunch of guys from their Toronto Marlies system there, no wonder the Leafs have to hold firm here and not give in to the demands. But, boy, what a mess. And the longer this goes, the more it gets talked about. What I found troubling was the fact that Shanahan was even talking at all. I mean, it kind of looked like he's out there trying to do some damage control for his general manager because the general manager had said we can and we will sign all these guys, and they don't have one signed, and there's a lot of discussion about it. And then when he comes out to do damage control, he arguably made it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it wasn't necessarily damage control he was trying to do, but he was trying to sway the media in the club's favor even more. But
when does negotiating in public help? When does negotiating in public ever really help a contract?
It doesn't really.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah. Never. No, it doesn't. It's a distraction. And I think as the season goes on, I think if I'm Nylander, I wouldn't mind. I would probably be waiting a little bit longer because I think the Leafs are going to get off to a little bit of a slow start. I mean, they won last night, but I think that there's going to be a little bit of a bump here. I think that there's a lot of high expectations, but I think teams are going to be looking forward to them. As I said, I'm not saying I love Nylander, but I look at that winger crew, and I don't think that's a strong wing. That's necessarily wings that I would be like, oh my gosh, we have those guys as wings. I mean, I know their centers are strong, but the wing side isn't as strong in my opinion. But so if I'm Nylander, I would wait.
Yeah, it'll be a game-to-game thing. If the Leafs get off to a really hot start, he's going to have to eventually come off his position, and he'll end up signing. But We'll see.
Yeah. Before we get to the Stanley Cup predictions, I also forgot, down the I-5 in Vancouver, in a West Coast city with grunge rock, the Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Mariners, and much more. The NHL is coming to Seattle. How excited are you to have a team in Seattle? To finally have like a legitimate regional rivalry.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You can see the rivalries in that the Whitecaps and Sounders have developed in the MLS. You see what the rivalry could be with, if they're both good, it would be fantastic. And Seattle's just an awesome city anyways. So just another city to go road trip to watch hockey, and I think that's fantastic.
And we certainly add something for the fans in terms of having another city nearby where they could go and get that friendly rivalry going and whatnot. And we, of course, it's a great point that we've seen that with the Sounders and the Whitecaps. I think the club would really like it, though, because that's one less other place further away that they have to travel to for road games. You know, you think of how the travel gets kept a little closer to home that way. Not for the opposite conference. Obviously, it's the same number of games they'd be playing, the same teams that they'd be playing in each Eastern Conference building once per season. But that reduces the number of games they have to play against Central Division teams, which can still be pretty far away as well.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I think Seattle will do well. I think better than a lot of people think. I think that there's a really good hockey base, and I think also because after the Seahawks play, there's kind of this lull there with not much going on. And then, of course, it will be interesting when the NBA hits what happens there, but what NHL does. But it's nice to see. I think it'll be great. And then once Portland comes, which I think will come eventually, we'll have a nice little West Coast trip that we can go down and watch hockey. Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, and California's. Why not?
Well, there's definitely an underserved television market there too, right? Because during the wintertime with no basketball team, I mean, what's on for pro sports during the week? It's other teams.
Yeah.
They've got the Seahawks. Yes, of course, they'll always be number one. The Mariners, unless they make a postseason run, they're done by October. So there is a big void there as far as potential TV revenues to be had. So it makes so much sense for the NHL. It makes a lot of sense for the Canucks. The California teams would probably like it as well to keep their travel a little lighter as well. So we'll see. The only question is when are they going to start? Is it going to be 2020 or is it going to be the year after?
I heard 2020.
Yeah, I think that's what they're hoping for, but I think a lot of it will depend on how the feeling of the next CBA negotiations go, because I don't think the PA, one of the PA or the league will opt out when they have their chance, and we'll have to go through negotiations for a new CBA again.
Yeah, there'll be a lockout.
Yeah.
The question is, will Gary Bettman be around for that? But that's, I guess, for a topic for another time, eh?
Yeah, we should. Well, that is a future conversation for sure.
Yeah.
We're not going to go through the whole. I mean, I guess we can do the Pacific Division specifically, but we can do that. So maybe let's start there. How are you seeing the Pacific Division specifically, and then maybe we'll kind of watch out for other contenders in the West?
Well, I think that the Pacific Division is San Jose's to lose. There's just too much talent on that team. They've got a good goaltender. They've got two defensemen that can play 30 minutes. They've got a lot of talent up front. I don't see another team challenging them. Vegas will still, I think they'll push them a little bit, but I think there will be some comeback to some of the players are going to come back to earth. Maybe not the big guy, not the big guns, the William Karlssons, the Jonathan Marchessaults, and then adding Pacioretty and Stastny help, but the Alex Tooks, the Eric Hollas, those guys, I think that they'll fall off and won't hit that get the 20 goals or come close like they did last year. So I think they'll still make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be winning the division like they did last year.
So you got them second?
Yeah, I have them second.
Who's third?
I would go with I'm going to go with LA. I think they've got a decent amount of young players coming up. to go with the veterans that they have, and they got another stud defenseman in Drew Doughty, and they know how to play in front of Jonathan Quick. And then I would go with I think Calgary will figure it out, and I think they'll finish fourth in the division and squeak into the playoffs. I think Anaheim falls out. I think Edmonton will battle with Anaheim for that fifth position. You can take either or, but both of them are going to miss the playoffs. I don't like either of those rosters enough to make the playoffs. And then you've got Arizona, who will be better than last year, but still a work in progress there. And then the Canucks are going to finish last in the Pacific.
I'm pretty similar. I have the same top three. I think San Jose is the most complete team. They've got all the weapons there. Vegas still strong. Would expect a bit of a regression there. I wonder, is Marc-Andre Fleury going to continue to be the dominant goalie that he was last year? Los Angeles, still so many great, experienced, hardworking players there. They added Kovalchuk, so that's a big boost. They've got Jonathan Quick. You always got to like their chances with Quick. I don't have any more than 4 teams from the Pacific Division in the playoffs. I'm going to say that Edmonton squeaks it out for that last spot out of the Pacific Division. The Oilers still have some weaker competition in their own division with the Canucks there and Arizona. And I think that in a Calgary-Edmonton, if you wanted to say out of 7 games, I think you'd give Edmonton a slight edge there, just purely on the McDavid factor. So I'm gonna go, but that's just barely. I mean, I would have Calgary competing hard for that last spot out of the Pacific Division as well. I don't see Anaheim being that close, and that would leave the Canucks likely last in the Pacific Division, but. Both Calgary and Edmonton making it, there's no chance of that.
I have the San Jose and Vegas as the top 2. I am torn between LA and Calgary for 3rd and 4th. I think where LA has the big edge is goaltending, because Quick, I think, is top 5 in this league, but I feel like the Flames forwards are stronger if they play well. So. But I think goaltending is I'm going to go LA 3rd, Calgary 4th. I think those 4 are going to make the playoffs. Anaheim will be 5th, Edmonton will be 6th, and I don't think Tyler. I'm sorry, I don't see where the Oilers have improved. They have Connor McDavid. I get he's the best player, but this defense still is lackluster. They didn't bring any. They brought in forwards like Tobias Reeder is a forward. That's nice. Kyle Brodziak is a forward, but I don't see this team being better. And you can't play Cam Talbot 70 games.
Those are very good points, and I mean, I would agree they didn't really do much to improve the team in the off season. I think just maybe having lesser expectations would help that group. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
In a weird way, I think that there is more pressure on the Oilers than there is one of the more high-pressure situations in the NHL. Because you have Connor McDavid, I think that the expectations of this team is, like, this team should be a playoff team with a McDavid, Draisaitl, and a Nugent Hopkins.
Well, I think the fans will start to get impatient if they don't get off to a good start. That's no question there. One thing we're all assuming here is that there will be 4 teams from the Pacific Division in the playoffs. And remember that the Central Division is still really strong. They might grab 5 playoff spots.
My playoffs from the Central are Nashville, Winnipeg, and St. Louis. For sure. I mean, I think I could see an argument for others. I don't think Chicago is a playoff team. I'm sorry, I still don't see Dallas as a playoff team.
Neither do I.
I don't see Minnesota as a really strong playoff team. I do think Colorado is going to take a step back. I think Winnipeg is also going to take a little bit of a step back. I mean, I know that team is really talented, but I wouldn't be surprised if they take a little bit of a step back this year too.
Yeah, I see Winnipeg winning the Central. I see Nashville being up there, and I see Colorado St. Louis making the playoffs. I see Colorado just missing. So
1, 2, 3 in the Central for me. I had Winnipeg, Nashville, and St. Louis, and then I have Colorado grabbing a wild card spot. And if there is to be a fifth team from the from the Central Division, then I'm going to say Minnesota probably grabs that spot, but I'm not big on the Wild and where they're at coming into this year.
Neither am I. They have some nice stuff, but not great stuff. We'll hold off on the winner. My playoffs in the East: Tampa, Boston, Toronto in that division for sure. Pittsburgh, Washington, Columbus are my for sures. And I'm kind of inclined to stick with what happened last year in New Jersey and Philly are the two others.
I think Toronto, Boston, and Tampa will definitely be the three out of the Atlantic. I don't see anyone else doing anything there. Washington, Pittsburgh, and are going to run away with that Metropolitan Division. I think Columbus will be in there as well. I'm going to say that Carolina sneaks in. They've got a lot of talent on that blue line, and if Mrazek can be an average at best, an average goalie for them with that blue line in front of him, that'll be good enough to get them into the playoffs. And then that leaves one more position, and I think we'll see a New Jersey continue to get better and get in again.
Make it 3 for 3 here. Toronto, Tampa Bay, Boston, I would have from the Atlantic Division as for sure's. Pittsburgh, Washington, and New Jersey, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3 for the Metropolitan Division. I'll say Philadelphia probably retains a wild card spot. I think Columbus is going to be hanging on for dear life there at the end to get a playoff spot, but I think that they can squeak it out ahead of, say, Carolina and Florida. But obviously not seeing as much of the Eastern Conference. I'm not as solid on those choices as I am on my Western choices.
Yeah, I feel like I'm underestimating Florida a little bit, but who knows? Because I hear a lot of people from the Florida Panthers organization said, watch out for this team. So I'll have them in mind, but yeah. My Stanley Cup final for the West, I think it's, this may seem easy, but I think to me, that defense in San Jose, that goaltending in San Jose, the way that they're set up, they are going to be able to make a pretty good acquisition at the trade deadline. That I think that they're going to win the West. I think they'll be the Stanley Cup representative in the West. And I feel like Tampa Bay is going to do it this year. It's so hard to. I think it's going to be a Tampa Bay Washington Eastern final again. I think Tampa Bay does it this time, and I think I feel like Tampa Bay is the team to win this year. I think that they're going to do it, but I picked them last year.
I have the same Cup final, and I have the same feeling that it's Tampa Bay's year.
My Final Four had San Jose and Nashville for the Western Conference Final, Tampa Bay against Pittsburgh in the Eastern Conference Final, and I think that I'm going to make this 3 for 3, that it's Tampa and San Jose that meet in the final. And the Lightning have just been knocking at the door for so long, it seems, that eventually they're going to bust through there. Tampa's been such a solid team for a number of years now that I have to still like their chances.
It's going to be fun. And is there? It's going to be fun. It's going to be so interesting. There's going to be a lot of tops and turves, and lots of interesting things that I think are going to happen. I think we covered a lot. We're almost at an hour and a half. Twitter, where do we follow you guys?
I am Beardy Canucks 03.
And I'm at T Noble, TNOBLE.
Okay, and you can follow me, KVOLE, all podcasts on Spreaker.com, KVOLE, and you can also follow Podcast Hockey. But really just follow KVOLE because I just use Podcast Hockey to tweet that I have the podcast. I don't actually tweet from there. So follow KVOLE. Thanks, guys, once again. Great episode. And thank you all for listening. And we will talk to you all really soon. Bye for now.